So we're going to be looking at the second method on how to set up Bigger Better Breaker Bead. So we are going to go through, and similar to how we did with the SnakeDr Classic, we're going to go through and we're going to create a loop where we come around on the back side and through so that the tail is facing towards the free end. Okay? So we're going to get that sliding loop in there. We're going to go through and we're going to set it so that it is a little bit smaller than the breaker bead. Okay? So then we would go through and we would tighten this up. We'd find out roughly where we want it. So right now this knot slides and we want to avoid that. So the way that I go through, and easiest way for me to make a non-slip knot in that, once I have it sized, is I go through and I take the free end as such and I create a similar type of overhand knot going over top of the end that was there. So now we have a loop, and this loop doesn't get tighter and it doesn't expand. So it kind of looks like a little noose. Okay? Then what we're going to do is on the other end, we take the breaker bead and you'll notice that there's a taper to it. We want to go through and have that taper facing out, and I'll explain why, or sorry, the fat end facing out, and I'll explain why in a second. We feed this end through the center hole, and then we're just going to use a very basic stopper knot. All right, just a normal knot. You don't need to go 3/8. And we're going to go through and we're going to get that set up. And once we have the size and everything of it, we would go through and we'd crank that down. Right? When we want to go through and put this onto something, we simply go through and feed this in. Right? Feed the breaker bead through that eye, and we're ready to go. Okay? We may not want to go through and have this on our wrist. We may want to go through and have it wrapped around our belt or kind of hidden on us somewhere else. So there's tons of options for this. You may use it as a way to secure another piece of kit. Now the reason, and we would go through and we'd tighten this all up to get these knots to crank down. You get a little more length that way. The reason that this taper needs to be out and that I prefer this type of a setup versus the classic is when I go through and I use this, I put my thumb here. Now I rotate my thumb and I pull back on the bead. So what happens is as this lets go, this comes around, it shoots through and changes on the direction, and we're going to smash this lip, focusing all of the energy into the target. So we want to go through and we want to rotate down, and we stand, it also gives us distance off of the target and allows us to rotate over and kick it back. So I find that it's easier to get more stretch and use all the stored energy in the cord with that type of method, as well as going through and using the thumb. Now remember, you want to load that thumb and not just pull straight back. You want to rotate the wrist so that it doesn't wind up hitting you in the finger. It allows you to load up the Shockcord and load up the tendons, focusing more energy onto that edge, as well as you can be off the target, so you're less likely to get cut glass on you, etc., etc.